The sun was streaming through the classroom windows on what seemed like just another ordinary Wednesday afternoon at Riverside Elementary School. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward 2 p.m. as the fourth-grade students worked on their arts and crafts projects, their desks covered with colorful paper, scissors, and bottles of glue. In the third row, near the window, sat a bright-eyed young boy with beautifully textured hair that caught the sunlight just right. He was working quietly on his project, carefully cutting shapes from construction paper to create a family tree, an assignment the class had been given to celebrate Family Heritage Month. Ms. Thompson, who had been teaching at Riverside Elementary for 15 years, walked between the rows of desks, checking on each student's progress. However, anyone paying close attention might have noticed how her smile would fade slightly whenever she approached this particular student's desk. It wasn't anything obvious, just subtle changes in her expression and tone that most adults would miss but children could sense instinctively. The young boy had always been one of the top students in class. His homework was always complete, his tests showed excellent understanding, and he was unfailingly polite. But Miss Thompson had been making increasingly frequent comments about his appearance, particularly his hair, which he wore in a natural style his family took great pride in. That afternoon, as the classroom hummed with the busy sounds of children working, Miss Thompson stopped at his desk again. She stood there for a moment, watching as he carefully arranged photos of his family members on the construction paper. His project was nearly complete, and it was arguably one of the best in the class. "Your paper isn't properly glued down," she said, though the corners were, in fact, secured just fine. Before the boy could respond, she had already reached for what appeared to be a bottle of craft glue from her supply caddy. "Here, let me help you fix that." The other students were too absorbed in their own work to notice what happened next. Miss Thompson began applying what she claimed was regular craft glue, but the sharp chemical smell that filled the air was nothing like the familiar scent of school glue. Her movements were deliberate as she worked, and if anyone had been watching closely, they might have noticed how she seemed to focus more on the areas near his hair than on the actual project. The boy sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, as his teacher helped with his project. He could feel something wasn't right. The glue felt different, and there was that strange smell, but like many children his age, he had been taught to respect authority and trust his teachers. Even when he felt the cold liquid touching his scalp, he remained quiet, though his heart began to race. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, he could feel his hair becoming stiff and hard in places. It felt uncomfortable, but he didn't want to draw attention to himself or get in trouble for complaining. He sat through his remaining classes, counting the minutes until the final bell would ring. What Miss Thompson didn't realize as she walked away from his desk that afternoon, wearing a satisfied expression, was that her actions would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the entire school district to its core. She had no idea about the boy's family background, his father's profession, or the storm that was about to break over Riverside Elementary. As the final bell rang and children began packing up their belongings, the young boy carefully placed his family tree project in his folder. Despite everything, he had managed to complete it beautifully. The photos of his family smiled up at him as he closed the folder, faces that would soon become very important to the story about to unfold. Little did Miss Thompson know, but her decision that afternoon would not only end her teaching career, but would also spark a movement that would change how schools across the country addressed discrimination and bias in the classroom. The simple act of helping with a craft project was about to expose years of subtle discrimination and lead to reforms that would protect countless students in the future. The afternoon sun was starting to dip behind the trees as the school bus pulled up to the stop on Oak Street. As the young boy stepped off, his mother was waiting there as usual, ready to greet him with her warm smile. She noticed something was different about him right away. Mothers have that special ability to sense when something isn't quite right with their children. "How was school today, sweetie?" she asked, reaching out to ruffle his hair as she always did. But this time, something felt wrong. Instead of the soft, bouncy texture she was used to, her fingers met resistance. Parts of his hair felt hard, almost like plastic. "What's this in your hair?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm even as concern began to build in her chest. Her son looked down at his shoes, shuffling his feet nervously on the sidewalk. The walk home from the bus stop usually took 5 minutes, but today they stopped right there as she gently examined his hair. Miss Thompson said she was helping me with my family tree project, he said quietly, still not meeting his mother's eyes. She said my paper wasn't glued down properly. The mother's heart sank as she carefully touched different spots in her son's hair, finding more and more areas that were stiff and hardened. The chemical smell still lingered, and with growing horror, she realized this was no ordinary craft glue. This was industrial-strength super glue, the kind that creates permanent bonds. Inside their home, in the bright light of the bathroom, the full extent of what had happened became clear. The super glue had been deliberately applied in several places, creating hardened patches throughout her son's carefully maintained natural hair. As she tried to gently separate some of the strands, her son winced, and tears began forming in his eyes. It started feeling funny during math class, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. But I didn't want to say anything. Miss Thompson said she was just helping me. The mother's hands shook as she took photos with her phone, documenting every spot where the super glue had been applied. Her mind was racing, thinking about all the little comments and incidents her son had mentioned over the past few months. The way Ms. Thompson would make him sit at the back of the class, despite his perfect behavior, how she never chose him to help hand out materials, the subtle ways she'd make him feel different from his classmates. She tried calling the school, but by this time, the office was closed. Looking at her son's reflection in the mirror, she saw not just the physical damage to his hair, but the hurt and confusion in his eyes. This was supposed to be a safe place. School should be a place where children feel protected and valued. "Am I in trouble?" he asked softly, misinterpreting his mother's silence for anger. "No, baby, you're not in trouble at all," she assured him, pulling him into a tight hug. "You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing about this is your fault." She sent a text message to her husband, asking him to come home right away. She didn't explain everything in the message. Some things needed to be seen to be believed. As she waited for him to arrive, she held her son close, her mind already formulating plans for what needed to be done next. What happened that afternoon wasn't just about damaged hair. It was about dignity, respect, and a child's right to feel safe at school. The mother knew this incident would leave more than just physical marks. It would leave emotional ones too. But she also knew that her family had the strength and resources to fight back, not just for their son, but for all the children who might face similar treatment. As the afternoon turned to evening, she heard her husband's car pull into the driveway. She took a deep breath, knowing that once he saw what had happened to their son, things at Riverside Elementary would never be the same. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments, and this seemingly ordinary Wednesday was about to become the catalyst for something much larger than anyone could have anticipated. The sound of keys turning in the front door broke the evening silence. The father had rushed home from his law office as soon as he received his wife's message, his mind racing with possibilities of what could have happened. Nothing had prepared him for what he was about to see. As he stepped into the living room, still wearing his court suit from earlier that day, the sight of his son sitting quietly on the couch made him pause. The boy's usually vibrant hair was matted and hardened in places, clearly damaged by something that shouldn't have been anywhere near a child's head. "Let me see, son," he said softly, kneeling in front of the couch. His voice remained steady, though inside, a storm was brewing. As a civil rights attorney, he had spent his career fighting against discrimination in schools, workplaces, and public institutions. But this was different. This was personal. His wife explained what had happened, showing him the photos she had taken. With each detail she shared, his jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm. He had learned long ago that anger, while justified, wasn't always the most effective tool for change. "Does it hurt?" he asked his son, gently touching one of the hardened spots. "Only when I try to move it," the boy answered, his voice small but brave. "Dad, why did Miss Thompson do this? Did I do something wrong?" The question hit harder than any argument he ever faced in court. Here was his son, a bright, loving child, wondering if he deserved to be treated this way. The father took a deep breath before responding. "No, son, you didn't do anything wrong," he said firmly. "Sometimes people do unkind things because of their own problems, not because of anything you did. But what Miss Thompson did was wrong, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen to any other children." He pulled out his phone and started making calls. first to a doctor who could document the damage and ensure there wouldn't be any chemical burns from the super glue, then to a hair specialist who had experience dealing with similar cases of hair damage. His network of professional contacts, built over 15 years of civil rights work, was about to become invaluable. As he made these calls, he watched his wife trying to comfort their son, who was now showing her his family tree project, the assignment that had led to this incident. The project was beautifully done, with pictures carefully arranged and labeled. The irony wasn't lost on him. A project meant to celebrate family heritage had become the setting for an act of discrimination. "We'll need to speak to the principal first thing tomorrow morning," he told his wife. "But tonight, we focus on making sure he's okay." He turned to his son. "How about we order your favorite dinner? And maybe we can watch that new superhero movie you've been talking about." The boy's face lit up slightly at this suggestion. It was important to show him that this incident, while serious, wouldn't define his life or change how his family saw him. They would deal with the school tomorrow, but tonight was about healing and family. Later that evening, after their son had gone to bed, the father sat in his home office, making detailed notes about everything that had happened. His legal pad filled with points that would soon become the foundation of a case that would shake the entire school district. But more than just building a legal case, he was planning how to turn this incident into a catalyst for real change. He thought about all the other children who might have faced similar discrimination, but didn't have parents who could fight back effectively. He thought about the countless times he had represented families in discrimination cases and how this time it wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. As he wrote, he began formulating a plan that would go beyond just addressing this single incident. This would become a movement to ensure that no child would have to experience what his son had gone through. The quiet scratch of his pen on paper continued late into the night, each word written with the determination of a father protecting not just his own child, but all children who might face similar treatment. Tomorrow would bring challenges, confrontations, and the beginning of a long journey toward justice. But tonight, in the quiet of his home office, a father's love was being transformed into a force for change that would eventually reshape how schools across the country handled issues of discrimination and bias. The next morning arrived with a sense of purpose at Riverside Elementary School. The principal's office was already busy when the young boy's parents walked in, their son between them, his damaged hair a silent testimony to what had happened the day before. The principal, a man who had run the school for 8 years, shifted uncomfortably in his chair as he listened to their account. "It must have been an accident during craft time," the principal suggested, his hands folded neatly on his desk. "Ms. Thompson has been with us for 15 years. She wouldn't deliberately." "Then you won't mind if we review the security footage," the father interrupted calmly, his years of courtroom experience evident in his steady tone. The principal's slight hesitation spoke volumes. What the security cameras revealed told a very different story from the accident the school initially claimed. The footage clearly showed Ms. Thompson's deliberate movements, the way she had positioned herself near the boy's hair, and how she had selected a specific bottle from her supply caddy rather than using the regular craft glue available to all students. But the investigation didn't stop there. As word spread through the school community, other students began coming forward with their own stories. A quiet girl from the back of the class revealed how Ms. Thompson would always make comments about her curly hair being unprofessional. Another student shared how the teacher had consistently placed certain students at the back of the class, despite their perfect behavior and good grades. The school counselor, who had always had concerns but never enough evidence to act on them, finally spoke up. She shared documentation of multiple incidents where students had come to her upset after interactions with Ms. Thompson, but their complaints had been dismissed as oversensitivity. "I remember when she made me change seats," one student told the investigators, their voice barely above a whisper. "She said my hair was distracting other students, but I was just wearing it natural, like my mom does." The investigation team discovered a pattern that stretched back several years. They found old emails where parents had raised concerns about Ms. Thompson's behavior, only to have them brushed aside or explained away. The school's filing cabinet held a stack of transfer requests from parents who had moved their children to different classes, many citing uncomfortable classroom environment as the reason. A former teaching assistant came forward with her own story. She had worked in Ms. Thompson's classroom 2 years ago and had witnessed similar incidents of subtle discrimination. It was always done in a way that seemed innocent on the surface, she explained. A comment here, a seating change there. But when you put it all together, the pattern was clear. The school's security guard, who had been watching the cameras for years, shared footage from previous incidents that had gone unnoticed. Small moments caught on camera now took on new meaning. The way certain students were consistently overlooked for classroom privileges, how some children's raised hands were routinely ignored, the subtle but persistent pattern of differential treatment. Parents began organizing meetings in living rooms and community centers, sharing stories they had previously kept to themselves. Each story added another piece to the puzzle, revealing a picture of long-standing bias that had gone unchecked for far too long. The young boy's family had inadvertently opened a door that couldn't be closed again. What started as an investigation into one incident was quickly becoming an examination of systemic issues within the school. The evidence mounted day by day, making it impossible for the school board to maintain their initial stance that this was an isolated incident. Local community leaders began to take notice. They organized listening sessions where current and former students could share their experiences in a safe environment. The stories that emerged painted a picture of a deeper problem that needed addressing not just at Riverside Elementary, but throughout the entire school district. As the investigation continued, the young boy's father worked tirelessly, documenting every new piece of evidence, every testimony, every video clip. His legal pad filled with notes that would soon become crucial in bringing about real change. But more importantly, his actions gave others the courage to speak up about their own experiences. The investigation was revealing more than just one teacher's actions. It was exposing a system that had allowed such behavior to go unchecked for years. Each new discovery reinforced what the boy's parents had known from the beginning. This wasn't just about one incident with super glue. It was about ensuring every child could go to school without fear of discrimination, subtle or overt. As the fourth week of investigation drew to a close, it was clear that Riverside Elementary would never be the same. The truth that had been hidden beneath years of silence was finally coming to light, and with it came the opportunity for real, lasting change. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters the morning the case officially began. The young boy's father, now serving as both parent and attorney, straightened his tie as he prepared to enter the building. This wasn't just another day in court for him. This was about transforming a painful incident into lasting change. Inside the courtroom, the evidence was laid out piece by piece. The security footage played on screens, showing the deliberate way Ms. Thompson had handled the super glue. Photographs of the damaged hair were displayed, along with medical reports documenting the physical and emotional impact on the young student. But what made this case different was how it grew beyond that one incident. Former students came forward to testify, their stories painting a picture of years of subtle discrimination. A teenager who had been in Ms. Thompson's class 5 years ago described how her self-confidence had been damaged by daily comments about her appearance. Parents shared stories of having to transfer their children to different schools after their concerns were ignored. "We're not just here about super glue," the father explained to the jury in his opening statement. "We're here because every child deserves to feel safe and valued in their classroom. We're here because silence in the face of discrimination only allows it to grow stronger." The school district's lawyers tried to paint the incident as an isolated mistake, but the evidence told a different story. Email records showed years of complaints that had been swept under the rug. The school's own records revealed a pattern of certain students being disciplined more harshly than others for the same behaviors. The case caught the attention of national news media. Soon, people across the country were sharing similar stories from their own schools. What started as one family's fight for justice was becoming a movement. Parents from other states reached out, describing similar incidents that had gone unaddressed. Local community organizations rallied around the family. They organized peaceful demonstrations outside the courthouse, holding signs that read "Every Child Matters" and "Education Without Discrimination." The crowds grew larger each day, as more people recognized the importance of this case for their own children's futures. The young boy's mother spoke at a community meeting one evening, her voice steady despite her emotion. "This isn't just about our son anymore," she explained to the packed room. This is about making sure no parent has to see their child come home feeling less than worthy because of who they are. Expert witnesses took the stand, explaining how seemingly small acts of discrimination can have lasting impacts on children's development and self-esteem. Child psychologists shared research about the importance of creating inclusive classroom environments where every student feels valued and respected. The defense team's arguments began to crumble as more evidence emerged. Former school administrators admitted they had known about problems but hadn't taken sufficient action. The school district's training policies were revealed to be outdated and inadequate, with no real system in place for addressing bias in the classroom. In the courthouse hallways during breaks, parents would approach the boy's father, tears in their eyes, thanking him for fighting this battle. Many shared how they wished they'd had the resources and courage to stand up when their own children faced similar treatment. The case wasn't just being fought in the courtroom. Every evening, the father would meet with community groups, helping them understand their rights and how to advocate for their children effectively. He was building a network of informed, empowered parents who would continue fighting for equality long after this case was over. The young boy, meanwhile, was healing. His hair was growing back healthy and strong, but more importantly, his spirit remained unbroken. He watched his parents turn their pain into purpose and learned a powerful lesson about standing up for what's right, not just for yourself, but for others who might not have a voice. As the trial entered its final weeks, something unexpected happened. Other school districts began reaching out, asking for help in reviewing and updating their own policies. They wanted to be proactive in preventing similar incidents, recognizing that change shouldn't always require a lawsuit to happen. The father's closing argument was simple but powerful. He spoke about how schools should be places of growth and opportunity, not spaces where children learn to doubt their worth. He talked about the responsibility we all have to speak up when we see wrong being done, and how true change begins with acknowledging there's a problem to be fixed. The courthouse fell silent as everyone waited for the verdict. But regardless of the legal outcome, it was clear that this case had already achieved something remarkable. It had started a conversation that couldn't be stopped and sparked a movement that would continue growing long after the final gavel fell. The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside Elementary's playground as workers installed new welcome signs in multiple languages. It had been 6 months since the verdict, and the school was undergoing more than just physical changes. The transformation ran much deeper, touching every aspect of how the school operated. The old principal's office, once a place students feared, had been reimagined as a welcoming space with comfortable chairs and artwork from different cultures on the walls. The new principal, chosen by a diverse committee of parents and educators, had an open-door policy that made everyone feel heard and valued. "We're rebuilding from the ground up," the new principal explained during a community meeting. "Every policy, every practice, every decision we make now goes through a simple but important filter. Does this make all our students feel equally valued and supported?" The changes were visible everywhere. The school library now featured books showing children from all backgrounds achieving great things. The walls displayed artwork celebrating different cultures and traditions, but the most significant changes weren't the ones you could see. They were in how people treated each other. Teachers underwent comprehensive training that went beyond just checking boxes. They participated in workshops led by experts in childhood development and cultural awareness. These weren't just boring lectures. They included real discussions about unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and creating truly inclusive classrooms. "I never realized some of the things I was doing might make students feel excluded," one teacher shared during a training session. "Now, I think carefully about every decision I make, from how I arrange seating to which examples I use in math problems." The school's hiring process was completely overhauled. New teachers weren't just evaluated on their teaching credentials, they had to demonstrate their commitment to creating an inclusive classroom environment. The interview process now included scenarios about handling diversity and ensuring every student felt valued. Parents became more involved than ever before. The school created a diversity committee where parents from all backgrounds had a real voice in school decisions. They didn't just attend meetings, they helped shape policies, planned cultural events, and served as resources for teachers wanting to better understand different cultural perspectives. The student council was restructured to ensure representation from all grade levels and backgrounds. These young leaders helped organize cultural celebration days where students could share their family traditions, favorite foods, and stories about their heritage. The playground became a place where children from all backgrounds played together, sharing games from different cultures. Even the curriculum saw major changes. History lessons were updated to include diverse perspectives and achievements. Science classes highlighted contributions from scientists of all backgrounds. Math word problems reflected real-world situations that all students could relate to. The school counselor's office expanded its services, offering support groups where students could talk openly about their experiences and feelings. They created programs to help students build confidence and understand the value of their unique identities. My daughter used to be scared to wear her hair in traditional styles, one parent shared at a community meeting. Now she's proud to express herself, and her classmates ask questions with genuine interest instead of judgment. The cafeteria menu was expanded to include dishes from different cultures, and students learned about the history and significance of various foods. Lunchtime became an opportunity for cultural exchange, with children proudly sharing their families' traditional meals. The school's approach to discipline changed dramatically. Instead of immediate punishment, there was now a focus on understanding and resolution. When conflicts arose, students were encouraged to talk through their differences with guidance from trained staff members. Professional development didn't stop after the initial changes. Teachers had regular sessions to share experiences, discuss challenges, and learn from each other. They created support networks to help each other grow and improve their teaching methods. The impact was clear in the students' attitudes and performance. Test scores improved across all groups, but more importantly, students were happier. Attendance rates went up and behavioral issues decreased. Children who had once been quiet and withdrawn began to participate actively in class discussions. "I feel like I can be myself here now," one student told the school newsletter, "and it's cool learning about my friends' backgrounds too. We're all different, but that's what makes our school special." The transformation of Riverside Elementary became a model for other schools in the district and beyond. Educators from other states visited to learn from their experience and implement similar changes in their own schools. The young boy who had been at the center of the original incident was now thriving in this new environment. His story had become a catalyst for change, but it was the entire community's commitment to transformation that made that change last. 1 year had passed since that life-changing day in the arts and crafts class. The young boy stood in front of his bathroom mirror, smiling at his reflection as he got ready for school. His hair had grown back beautifully, but he had grown in many other ways too. The incident that could have broken his spirit had instead taught him powerful lessons about standing up for what's right. His new school was different from Riverside Elementary in many ways, but the changes his case had sparked were now spreading far beyond both schools. The foundation his father had established with part of the settlement money was making real changes across the country. The Education Equality Foundation, as it was called, had already helped 20 other families fight similar battles. But more importantly, it worked to prevent such incidents from happening in the first place. They provided free training to schools, created educational materials about cultural sensitivity, and offered support to families facing discrimination. One morning, the boy's father received an unexpected email. It was from Ms. Thompson, his son's former teacher. After losing her teaching license and going through mandatory sensitivity training, she had done a lot of soul-searching. Her message wasn't asking for forgiveness. Instead, she was sharing how she now volunteered with a community organization, helping other teachers recognize and address their own biases. "Your son's case opened my eyes," she wrote. "I had to face some hard truths about myself, and while I can't undo what I did, I can help make sure it doesn't happen to other children." The story had taken on a life of its own. A popular children's book author had written a kid-friendly version about standing up to unfair treatment, carefully handling the sensitive topic in a way that helped young readers understand the importance of respect and equality. The book was now being used in schools nationwide to start conversations about treating everyone fairly. Local community centers had started after-school programs focused on cultural exchange and understanding. Children from different backgrounds came together to share their stories, traditions, and experiences. The programs were so successful that they were being copied in other cities. The boy's mother had also found her voice. She started a support group for parents dealing with school-related discrimination. What began as small meetings in their living room had grown into a nationwide network of parents supporting each other and sharing resources. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead to the best changes, she often told new members. But we have to be brave enough to speak up and strong enough to keep fighting for what's right. The family's mailbox still regularly filled with letters from people their story had touched. There were thank you notes from parents whose children now felt safer at school, letters from teachers who had changed their approach to classroom management, and drawings from kids who felt empowered to be themselves. One letter stood out. It was from a retired teacher who had been in education for 40 years. "I watched your case closely," she wrote. "It made me think back on my own teaching career and wonder how many times I might have unknowingly hurt a student. Your family's courage is helping all of us in education do better." The boy's father had turned down numerous offers to write a book about the case. Instead, he focused on creating practical guides for parents about their children's rights in school and how to advocate for them effectively. These guides, available in multiple languages, had become valuable resources for families across the country. At his new school, the boy had become known for standing up for others. When he noticed a classmate being treated unfairly, he knew exactly how to help them get support. His experience had taught him that one person's courage could inspire others to speak up too. The settlement money had been significant, but the family used most of it to create scholarships for students who had faced discrimination. "Money can help fix some problems," the father explained to his son, "but helping others stand up for themselves creates change that lasts forever." As another school year began, the impact of their story continued to grow. Educational conferences now regularly included sessions about creating truly inclusive classrooms. School districts across the country had updated their policies, taking proactive steps to prevent discrimination rather than just reacting to incidents. The young boy who had once sat quietly while super glue was poured in his hair had found his voice. He spoke at youth leadership conferences, sharing his story in a way that empowered other kids to be proud of who they are and to speak up when they see something wrong. "Sometimes bad things happen," he told a group of students at a recent conference, "but how we respond to them can change the world. Every one of you has the power to stand up and make things better, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you." His words echoed the truth they had discovered through their journey. Real change doesn't just happen in courtrooms or school board meetings. It happens in everyday moments when people choose to stand up for what's right, when they refuse to let fear or discrimination have the final word, and when they work together to create the kind of world they want to live in.